On this week's episode of Your Voice to the World, we dive into the book Obstacle is the Way. And we talk about some stories Ryan Holiday shares around the principle of not just learning to live with obstacles, but seeing them as opportunities that help us live better, in more effective, happy, well-rounded lives. Let's do it. Welcome to Your Voice to the World. I'm Eddie Pinero, speaker, filmmaker, and storyteller, teaming up with Terrence McMahon, retired CEO and best-selling author. Having built multi-million-dollar businesses and created lifestyle brands enjoyed by millions around the world, we've established a blueprint to do more and become more. Now we're joining forces to inspire you to share your voice and build the business and lifestyle you've always dreamed of. Welcome to Your Voice to the World. I'm Eddie Pinero.
I'm Terrence McMahon.
And we help you share your voice.
And build your business.
And today we have one of the most anticipated books we've ever had on this podcast.
I love it. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. The timeless art of turning trials into triumph.
Hell yeah. So we're going to go through a bunch of like the little stories in there and kind of take you up and down some of the amazing examples he uses. But before we do that, just kind of some quick housekeeping things. 3 things. I want to let you all know that there is a Your Voice to the World Facebook group, and Steve's going to leave a link in the description. If you want to join a community of entrepreneurs, we do a lot of free training, a lot of discussion, more in-depth stuff on the books. So if you're interested, the link's going to be there. Come join us. It's a lot of fun. The second thing is, what is the second thing?
Leave a review.
Leave a review. Yeah, if you leave the more reviews you leave, the better we do. The better we do, the more resources we have to help you out. So that's really tremendous. And then the last thing is I want to thank everyone that called in and had questions for us about the book. At the end of the podcast, we're going to answer your questions and get into that. Anyone who hasn't called, feel free to do so for next week. We're going to be talking about The Martian. But that's it. I think we're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. It's funny how you look at the numbers. For those of you that are looking at getting your message out there, you want to look at your numbers, know your numbers. And we watched the reviews. As they came in, our listens went up. I think the algorithm picks up on the reviews. They're helpful. I know it sounds self-serving, but it'll serve everyone because the longer and the more reviews we get, I think the more people will get these great ideas and use them to help serve the world.
That was a much more eloquent way to put it
than
I did. Yeah,
that's right.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
And we still have that. We have one more week left on the giveaway too for that microphone. So essentially, and I'll hold it up, but we're going to go through the reviews. I think there's 93 now, and randomly pick one and reach out and send that baby away. So
cool.
All right.
This book could be a 3-hour podcast. I mean, the stories that Ryan Holiday collects about the concept of stoicism and how obstacles become the path.
Yeah.
What's in the way becomes the way, which is interesting. Because stoicism is kind of an obscure concept, but it's a Greek philosophy. There was a couple different camps of thought in Greece, 2 primary ones: Epicureans and Stoicism. Stoics and Epicureans, and the Stoics, I guess, are more calm, almost emotionless, and the Epicureans are more into wine and living. YOLO, you only live once, type of lifestyle, and I think there's good and bad in both. But we'll talk specifically today about how thinking like a Stoic could really help you, especially if the you-know-what hits the fan.
Yeah.
And you're in problem. You're in crisis. You're in a place where something seems like it's you're against the wall.
It's a really cool way of thinking. Like, it made us all. Steve went out and bought. What one did you buy, Steve?
Which one?
Didn't you buy a book right after? Oh, maybe you got Meditations.
Yeah, I got Marcus Aurelius' Meditations.
It's just a really cool way of thinking. And so throughout the book, like the idea, obstacle is the way. It's like, not just accept obstacles, but you can literally turn obstacles into opportunities. Everything's an opportunity in life. It's just how you look at it. And if you only see the positive, if you train your mind to not even see the negative, then really there is no negativity. It's all self-made. And so every single one of these stories in here, and we'll talk about our favorites, is about a person, a historical figure that just changed their perspective, that saw things a little bit differently and then lived that out and got entirely different results.
Yeah, because we talked about how to win friends and influence people, a couple, maybe I think last one. And then before that was Relentless by Tim Grover. We're talking about, that was a very contemporary book. And then How to Win Friends is a very older book to us, but this is 2,000, 3,000 years old. This is the basis of self-help. Most self-help can be beeline to a lot of these ideas and principles. People like George Washington were self-identified as Stoics, Thomas Jefferson, Amelia Earhart, Admiral Stockdale. These are all people that studied the concept of Stoicism. Rockefeller.
Yeah. What out of all these stories, what one was one of your favorites? Like, what's a good starting point, you think?
I mean, I like the first story that he talks about is Rockefeller. I mean, he was one of the richest people ever. In fact, he's everything he did with starting his businesses are all businesses that are alive today. The oil companies are all Rockefeller's companies. But he's a guy that was an accountant, I believe, and during the worst time of ever, depression, one of the first early depressions, he saw as an opportunity. He saw the financial fallout as a huge opportunity to create something, and he did that. So he drummed up some money, and he drummed up $500,000 from investors, which was a heck of a lot of money back then. And he went on a journey to find a suitable investment and came back with nothing. I guess the idea there is that he gained trust of the investors. Of course, when you give someone $500,000 to spend, they usually find a way to spend it.
Right.
But he gained trust, and he waited out until the right opportunity came, and he struck, and then he hit it. He took the crisis as an opportunity, a flip.
Yeah.
If you will.
I remember them emphasizing, like, they were shocked that someone would come back and redistribute the money. Oh, no thanks, couldn't find it.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was interested in that. You always, every time you ever gave anybody any money, this is Parkinson's law, right? If you have something, it finds a home.
Yeah.
If you have time to complete a project, if you have 6 weeks to complete a project, you wait till the last day of the 6th week. If you have extra money in a budget in your home and you're putting money in your account, you have an extra $1,000 for whatever reason, and it doesn't have a home, the world will find a home for it. That guy used discipline to not invest in something that wasn't the right thing, and he ended up waiting, and when things were the worst and the lowest, he struck and he won.
Yeah. Counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about on the way to lunch. It's essentially the same philosophy that Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger have. Like, when the world rushes in, you get out. When people get out, it's an opportunity to go in. And it's just sort of that way of thinking, that type of restraint and discipline.
Right. We talk about the soccer ball. The 10-year-olds playing soccer, all the kids are following the ball. There's always one kid that drifts away, and that's the kid that ends up scoring.
Right.
So following the path of others does not always lead to the way. The way is what is in the way, the obstacle. And that's kind of the basis of this book.
It's funny how challenging that is, but how there's so much reward there. And how, we know that. Like, our prefrontal cortex knows that, yet it's so hard, right? It's so challenging.
You got all the programming to not do it, and all of a sudden everything you're programmed to do says avoid this pain. This is going to be painful, when that pain is exactly the way. Yeah, when we used to sell insurance, this is a product you buy when you're going to die. All right, someone else gets the money. So you're never going to receive any of the direct benefit, at least in their mind. There are some ideas, and people would say, the premium was the problem. And I said, no, the premium's not the problem. The premium is the solution to your problem. So what's in the way is the way. That's the way to do what you want to do, because your brain will play a role against you taking that action in your own best interest, the survival hormones.
So was part of your challenge, explaining to people, was there a what's in it for me type thing? I'm not even going to get this.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And so you have to explain to them, it's a sense of altruism for the people you love and care about, basically. It's like, this is bigger than you.
Well, what happens with this is insurance, but this is actually referenced in the book is you need to be, if you're insuring your own life, you're insuring your greatest asset, your ability to earn money, and that goes away very quickly when you die, unexpectedly especially.
Right.
But you can never, because you're gone, you never can visualize what a bad thing happening. It's called cognitive dissonance. It's when your actions and your values are in conflict. Your brain will manufacture an excuse. That's why we have what fat doctors that smoke cigarettes. They smoke cigarettes and they're overweight and they eat badly. They don't really ever connect the dots that they're going to die from this. And what you have to do is you have to be an advocate. You have to represent the event, not the person. So you have to speak for it. You have to be objective. So a Stoic is always objective. They remove themselves from it and they look on to the event as if it's happening to someone else, and then the true answer will come. So when you can do that effectively, people will take the actions because they don't want their families not to have insurance, right?
Right.
And it's like not going to the gym. If you're objective about it and you take yourself out of the equation, you're looking down on your own self, overeating and not going to the gym and gaining weight, you're going to be looking at a fat version of your old self who's out of shape.
Right.
That will get sick. Objectivity.
It's why when you're looking at a friend or relative or loved one, you can look at them and you can give them advice that you would have a hard time giving yourself. Right? Because it's like completely objective. It's like the answer's so obvious. There's no emotional, minutia or anything like that. It's like
You've always been good with that. You're unemotional about some things. You just give the direct feedback. And that's good. If you have, if someone's just giving you information to make you feel better about yourself, there's a place for that and a time for that. But for the most part, if it's something significant and relevant,
you're just hurting the person.
Yeah, you're not telling them.
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways to being, when you're trying to give yourself advice and you're not seeking the help of others through mentors or studying or even in books, you're not being objective about your true circumstances, which is the first basis of a Stoic, is to see things as they really are. In the book, he talks a lot about people that looked at this, and Rockefeller looked at what it is. This is a depression, but it's also low prices.
Right.
So he didn't get caught up in the emotions of the depression and the negativity. He said, "Wow, there's a bargain. Everything's on sale right now.
Right.
I'm gonna go buy it." He took the $500,000 and bought it and took a lemon into lemonade. Right.
That's the way you look at it, right?
Yeah.
Same with Clooney.
Yeah.
It's like all he did was make that little pivot. So they talk about him going in and into auditions and just being nervous and not getting, the gigs. And one day he had the foresight to look back and same thing, like remove the emotion, become more objective and be like, wait a minute, I am the answer to this producer's problem. This producer has pressure. This producer has to make it happen. And all he's looking for is the best person to fill this role. And so this isn't about me. They don't hate me. It's nothing like I just need to be the answer to the producer's problem. And it changed his mentality, his mindset. And obviously everyone knows George Clooney. So
Well, yeah, he showed up. Remember we talked about the bait to put the bait in to suit the fish?
Yeah.
So he made himself into the actor. He acted like the person that he knew they had to hire. He became the solution to the problem instead of worrying about himself. Like, I'm going to be nervous. I'm going to skip a beat. That I rehearsed my line. He showed up as the guy. I'm going to get this role because I am the solution to their problem. And he became George Clooney, looking at the same exact circumstances just differently.
Yeah.
Flipping the coin over.
It happened. I mean, it's so prevalent to everything. When you can get out of your head, when you can start thinking about it through the terms of like, or the lens of, how am I doing? Every little, inner conflict, all that stuff that's there. If you pull up, if you rise above all that, the question is, are you delivering value? How are you helping people? Again, that sort of objectivity that's so hard to procure. It's so hard to get because it takes a lot of discipline to get beyond, this is how I feel. Right? Like we always joke around, I feel like this. I feel like we should do this and it's like, well, you feel like that.
Right.
Okay, but what does the data show? Like, and we have that back and forth all the time. It's like feeling is not reality, but it's a movie playing in our heads.
It's so good when you have data. I mean, when you have either data or a dry friend who is unemotional. Someone who would really tell you the truth. You never knows that person. They're sitting usually off to the side, a little And we're all laughing, and then you see a flat, almost a lifeless face because they don't emotionalize anything.
Right.
I have a friend like that, and he talks about it in the book. And when there's a crisis, like, why get upset? Because now you have two things to worry about. You got the crisis, and then you got the emotion of panic.
Yeah.
He says, get rid of that. There's no need to be panicking. And he referenced Grant.
I love this story.
Grant was being photographed, and the light was bad, and he's on his horse, and he's sitting there being photographed inside this museum, and he's looking at the photographer or the artist. I think it was a picture, and they had to drop a skylight, and the skylight, the guy let the skylight down to let light in, and it broke, and these shards of glass, these large shards of glass came down, and would have killed anybody if he hit them, like these big giant pieces of glass. And they crashed around Grant, and then the guy was looking at him. He said Grant never even flinched.
Didn't flinch.
He just looked at him, and the guy was amazed that Grant didn't flinch. He had just complete calmness about him. And, like, why get upset twice? When you have a problem, like if the plane's going down, does it make any, if you're panicking, you're gone. If you're drowning and you're upset that the car's in the water and you also have the problem of getting out of the car, you've just created another crisis that's arguably more difficult to get out of than the original crisis.
Right.
That's why I love Stoicism. I've always tried to be calm. I always say calm is contagious, right? Crazy is contagious too.
Right.
And that's kind of cool when you look at that.
You learn to dance with the chaos. It sort of becomes part of the process.
Right.
I was doing a YouTube live the other day, and someone asked, how do you handle getting negative comments on YouTube? Like, a lot of people really struggle with that. We talked about it on this show before. Right. And it's like, well, because we emotionalize it, it's difficult. Mm-hmm. But when you look at it objectively, like Justin, would you say Justin Bieber is one of the top 3 entertainers of our day? Probably, right?
Seems like it is, yeah.
If you look at any one of his videos, a quarter to a half of it is people just dragging him and talking trash about him. I mean, this is a guy that's like leading the way in 2020. And so, like, it's just part of the, like, anything you do, it will attract criticism. And so to have a mindset where you want to avoid that, it's literally putting a ceiling on your own growth, your own potential. You got to accept it, understand it. Okay, I'm growing, I'm adding value. Here comes some negativity, wave, and keep moving. You know?
Oh, it's not. I mean, when you get if you're out there sharing your message and you're going to come up with an idea, someone's going to tell you the idea sucks.
Right.
Someone's going to make fun of you. Someone's going to say you're not good enough. Someone's going to say there's certain versions of you that shouldn't be doing this. You're wasting your time. You should go back to doing something else.
Right.
We talked about this at lunch. We talked about people that just visualize like good things happening in La La Land, when the reality is you're going to go on a journey. You guys had a healthy debate about that. Remember that, Steve, at lunch? We had a healthy debate over which is a better way to do it. Like, you're going to do something that you're the best in the world at, or you're going to do something that you may not be the best in the world at, but it's really important to you. At what point do you quit something that's super important to you that looks like it's not going to happen, or it's unlikely?
Or how do you manage?
Talk about that. That was I wish the cameras were on. It was such a good debate.
I know,
it was healthy. It was healthy.
Steve, you should jump in after
Sure.
I kind of lay the groundwork here. Basically in the book there were 2 examples and 2 figures that went sort of different ways. Mm-hmm. So Jefferson wasn't a great orator, but he was a brilliant writer. I mean, he wrote the Declaration in one draft. Right. I mean, he's a brilliant. But he couldn't speak. And so instead of doubling down or trying to pursue that, he was competent enough there, but obviously became one of history's most successful people without improving there. Whereas, what's the guy's name? It starts with a D.
Demonstrates.
Demosthenes, something like that.
Yeah. Close enough. Yeah. I mean,
Google will help us. But anyway, so whereas he couldn't speak, and he was like terrible at what he did, but he had this dream to become an orator, and so he locked himself in a basement and spoke with pebbles in his did everything he could to improve. And so the question is, at what point do you draw the line? At what point do you pivot to something else versus doubling down? Like, Jefferson didn't spend years and years and years and years and years trying to become a better speaker. Right. He succeeded anyway. Whereas Demosthenes,
it's I don't know how to spell it, but it has no
speech
R in
impediment, right?
Yeah.
he became one of the world's best. And so, yeah, it's just an interesting question.
So the argument I observed, wasn't an argument, it was just a healthy debate, was Steve said, well, if it was really important to him, this guy, didn't have the equipment. An observer would say, you're going to be the best speaker in Athens ever, and you're going to be respected. Legions of men will listen to you. The emperors will hold you in their confidence. You'd say, no way, not that guy.
Well, the thing we were thinking about is like, how do you know when? How do you know when to choose one or accept one and put all your energy into something else? Or how do you know to try to overcome biology, as we talked about? It's like, that's the question. And the answer we kind of debated was, how good do you want to be? And we talk about trying to be the best in the world at something. And the other question is, if you believe it enough, maybe you'll shoot for the moon, land among the stars, and can you overcome it? And it's tough because if you want to be the best in the world, like both of these people did, it's almost like the only thing that I was thinking with this book is there's all these different examples, and he was giving examples of like different routes to achieve being the best in the world. So maybe like you can call it destiny or whatever, but Jefferson somehow knew. How do you get to that point of knowing you should accept it and going away? And that's the part that we kind of hit a roadblock at. How do you know where to stop? How do you know when to just really never give up on the thing that you want to do?
Right, because here's the reality. Like there's some truth to you can do anything, but the example I gave at lunch dealt with a lot of times people disregard biology. Right? So I know, because I'm 32 years old and I've known myself for 32 years old, I'm okay at math, but I had to work my ass off in math to do well, whereas other subjects I didn't, right? And so I could give every single ounce of myself to being a mathematician, and I'd be good, arguably very good. But someone who isn't just naturally gifted in math, giving the same amount of time, over time, they would be better. Right. And that's just, some of it is biological. And so, and I forget which one of you said it, but it was a great point. Well, it depends what your goal is. Not everyone wants to be the best in the world. Not everyone wants or needs to be a Jefferson. Right. At that point, it's kind of a moot conversation because it doesn't matter. You can be proficient, or as you said, king of your own world, the best in your own world. Right. But it's just a fun conceptual way to look at things.
Yeah, if the finish line, work backwards from the largest domino. I use the metaphor of the domino. The big one, if it's, I want to play music I want to play music for people, and I want to get paid to do it. Like you're thinking about a message maybe, and I was, maybe music's my message. Well, music's a very hard business to make money at, but musicians are just a different breed. Right. If you're working backwards from that, maybe being the best musician on earth isn't your home. Maybe being paid to play music comfortably is your home. And then Thomas Jefferson wanted to be president or something like that. He was Secretary of State. And then and Thomas Edison, the other Thomas, who had a whole different view, Edison would never gave up 6,000 different experiments.
Right.
So Jefferson cut and became a great writer, wrote the Declaration of Independence and many other things, spoke okay. Edison never stopped. In fact, Tesla worked for Edison. That's my favorite part of the book.
Yeah.
Tesla used to work for Edison, and Edison beat Tesla in the race to the incandescent light bulb. And Tesla was quoted that if Thomas Edison was asked to find a needle in a haystack, that he would take each piece of hay and identify it as it not being a needle one at a time until he found the needle. So that person just didn't quit. He had every reason in the world to quit.
That must make your skin crawl. That's like the antithesis of Terrence McMahon right there.
Yeah, I guess there's a healthy balance. I've struggled with it too. I mean, there's certain things I could be very good at that I've chosen not to do something that's more meaningful.
Right.
In light of my recent bout with my own mortality, I wanted to live a life more true to myself rather than the way I was living. And that's not just in business; that's in life. So that's I recreated that outcome. I'm in the process of recreating. I don't know exactly how, but this is something I enjoy doing a lot.
Right.
I enjoy reading books. I enjoy talking about books, and I also enjoy when more people call. And we've encouraged hundreds of thousands of people potentially to read books. Books that you never would read, and learn about these people and apply those into your own life, which is, I think, a cool thing.
Let's talk about that, because that was a big theme in the book.
The mortality?
Death. And how, that drastically changes people's life path.
Well, Montaigne was referenced in the book, the guy who he got in a bad horse accident. He's a famous French philosopher, a more contemporary philosopher who studied the Stoics, and he got thrown off his horse, and he was lifeless and bloody, brought back to his friend's house where they thought he was dead, and he woke up, and he wasn't dead. He had a near-death experience, and he spent his whole life contemplating or meditating on their mortality, not in a bad way. It's like, what can the certainty of your death do? You know it. You're real about it. As a Stoic, you see it for what it really is. Like, each day is gone forever, and you have it a finite amount of time, and we don't know what day you'll die. So each day should be its fullest day. Knowing that information, what are you doing today to make today the greatest day? That's kind of what it is. It's momentum mori, is a Greek Latin word for remember you're mortal.
Right.
And then Shakespeare wrote in one of his plays, every third thought shall be my grave.
Right.
In a good way, not in like, oh, a Debbie Downer, like I'm going to die. You know, so I've been there. I was lucky enough in many ways to have that one experience in my life. I had lots of luck that played a role in this, and being in a situation where I didn't die from terminal illness. I was granted the gift to live through a donor, through a miracle of medicine, science, spirituality. All the universe conspired to keep me alive, to do something different. That's really what happened, and I'm searching for what that means and what that looks like from working backwards. But I want to do some travel. I want to tell stories. I want to read books. I want to teach, curate. That's a good place to be.
Yeah. So it was essentially, I just think it's such an amazing thing because a lot of people don't see it, like they don't have that. It still seems like a far off thing. Like I could find out tomorrow that I'm sick or something like that, that it would make it real. You know, everyone that dies, you always hear them say, the same things. Like you're not living the life on your own terms. You're caring what people think. You're being dictated by reasons that are or rationale that is not important. And I wonder what it is about coming so close that makes it real. Like, why is it so difficult for people to understand that now? It's almost like the stove's hot, don't touch it, but you have to, it's like you got to touch it, burn your hand to know that it's hot. Does that make sense?
The weird part about my circumstances were I was in the insurance business. I had spoke about death so many times, so ineffectively,
right?
And I was like so many different times. I said, you could die, and in fact, I've had people that died and didn't buy insurance from me many times, and you're like, and then it happens to you. I remember when I was alive and in the insurance business. Of course, I was alive in 2001 when 9/11 took place.
Right.
So very historical event. But what was more historical is that how many people that were high end. I mean, a terrible event, but the people that died in the building, there was thousands. But most of those people were financial heroes. They were like the top of the employed at wirehouses and bond trading companies and investment bankers and venture capitalists. But the statistics came out that nobody had life insurance. Like all these stories came out that these people were relying on charities because they didn't think they'd die. Their income went away. What happened was the next month, because people learned about how real mortality was, life insurance had its greatest month of sales ever following 9/11 because
it became real.
The cook ended up in the kitchen.
Right.
Put the cook in the kitchen is an old, what story can connect you? And in Montaigne's story, in his philosophy, says you don't have to be near dead or dead to experience the meaning of your own mortality. Charlie Munger says this is that you live by, you learn through mistakes. They don't have to be your own. So my mistakes that I've made many, can be your teacher.
I love that.
What did you say today? You got a great quote. Don't bury your
mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a friend back home that anytime something great happens, I always give him a hard time about this. It's the first thing you hear. Right. Essentially. Right. But when there's not that success or trophy or he stumbles, that's not ever broadcasted. And that's not specific to him. It's just why we're having the conversation. No one wants to talk about the bad stuff. Right. But the idea is don't hide your failures. stand on your failures.
Right.
Because when you own them, again, it's more perspective. It's realizing like it's not a good thing. It's a courageous thing.
Right.
No one that's made an impact did it without failing. And so like broadcast that, you know, and I do that all the time in my videos. It's like I fell on my face here, guys. And I learned A, B, and C, and I'm better off now, and you can be better off too. It's
I
just a
love
different way
that
of looking at it, you know?
that concept. Don't bury your failures. Bring them to life. You
Yeah.
know, you could bring them. You could bring them to life. You can use bad events. In fact, there's there's actually a couple books I've been reading. It's like everyone talks about post-traumatic stress, PTSD. There's also a college doctor up in North Carolina that studies post-traumatic success. And there's just so many stories of people that had these near-death experiences that turned that mess into a message that went into these great journeys afterwards. And I think that it's this book, like whatever your perception of that distressful situation is, how you see it. If you see it as an impediment, and you take it, the world will take you that way. If you see it as an opportunity, you can take it the other way. It becomes the way.
Yeah, you realize like the things that are holding you back, the extent to which they're just not important, right? Like the Serenity's prayer, Serenity,
Right.
Serenity prayer, which, you know, basically it's the idea is letting go of the things you can't control, and you know, having the courage to control the things that you can.
Right.
And I think, you know, those situations help us realize how much we do have control over. You know, I mean, your message of recreation, it's like anyone can recreate themselves. There are certain things that are going to happen regardless. You can't change them, but you can change the way you think about those things that'll actually propel you forward. And ultimately, like, you have the ability to completely transform your situation, you know?
Right. It's a blessing when you're down and beat and you're at the lowest point and you think you can't take another shot. You think you're almost out. That's like when your nervous system should say, "Oh, bing, 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 bing." You have just hit the ground, and the ground is a foundation, the strongest place to build on going up. You can only go up now, so you don't have to worry about judgment. You don't have to worry about resources. Like if you're resourceful and you can start making momentum away from nothing, you know, go from nothing to something, and then you create momentum. And momentum obviously takes on its own.
That's a learned thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's really cool is like the art of making something from nothing
Right.
is not something that's intuitive. It's almost like a realization. You're like, there's always, you know, I use the metaphor, the answer is always a light switch away. There's always something in your realm that you can do that will help move you a little bit. And for me, like, I don't remember when I learned that or I started to understand that, but it was like when you know with confidence that the very thing you need is right within an arm's reach, you just got to tweak something, and it's going to start this momentum shift. You're never really lost. You're never screwed. You're never out of it because you always have the resources.
Right.
And it's a cool way to think of things. I mean, it's very helpful.
Just to get a win to feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Even that. Yeah. Small win.
Just one, the smallest win. It's, you know, if you can't get a yes, your domino's too big. You gotta go backwards one. You gotta go back to the smallest yes. You can knock it over, create momentum. That one will hit another one. And people try to go too high too quick. They get discouraged. And I see it a lot.
Sorry, I thought you were done.
No.
I was just gonna say, like, when someone says something nice to you, right? So let's say, like, or something small happens. Someone gives you a compliment, and it just brightens your day.
Right.
Right? Think about how arbitrary that is. Someone said something. That's literally, there's nothing tangible. There's nothing there. There's nothing to put in your pocket. Someone said something, changed the way you're thinking in the current state, and it's affecting your whole day. It's not a real thing. So the idea is to try and obtain little things that make you feel like that, because it's all subjective. It's all manufactured. It's all made up, and you can create that for yourself. That's not woo-woo, or, like, you know what I mean? That's just reality. Like, you can you can think a certain way, and it's gonna, you know, open the door for a more positive, productive, happy day.
Yeah, you asked me at the beginning of the show what my favorite story in the book was. It wasn't the one I said. I was just being polite. I'm an Alabama fan, so it was the Nick Saban story.
Oh,
Yeah, like Nick Saban's my hero. Like Nick Saban he's, believe it or not, referenced in the book He calls it the Saban. If you're at Alabama and you've been there and left, or you're a coach there, or even on the periphery of the team, Saban doesn't write books about this, but he has something he calls it the process. Right, the process is keep your eye on the process, what's in front of you, not on the prize.
Yeah.
Right, do the right thing. It's right in front of you right now, and what you want to have happen will happen. It's the domino effect. It's basically, as soon as I saw that, I said, oh my God, it's the domino effect. Like, what's the one thing you can do today in front of you that you can do and do it well and succeed at, that by doing so advances your situation?
I love it.
So if you have the wrong action against problem, or you interpret the problem the wrong way, I mean, the number one thing that you can do, if you have something bad happening and you feel like you have no power, you always have power. You can always interpret it differently. Like, oh, this is a good thing. What's the good thing in this situation? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the good thing about being terminally ill? You don't have to buy green bananas,
Right.
That's an old joke.
I like that.
But I mean, there's always something good that happens.
Right.
And there's good thing in everything. So you look at the failure, the two sides of the coin is failure and action. They're two sides of the same coin.
It helps you do well.
What can you do today? I love the Saban story. The process. Follow the process. Make your own process, but be real about it. That's what Stoics do. They see things as they really are. They don't lie to themselves.
Jocko talks about that. Like, from a leadership standpoint, like same thing as Saban's process essentially, but it's like if you are looking at 20 steps down the road, you're not going to do what's in front of you to the best of your ability, which I'm sure is what Saban's trying to get through to his team. It's like there's always a huge win to be had right now. And then, to your point, it's domino after domino after domino, but you build in this sort of mindset of we are the best and we are going to give everything to every second. If you're always looking down the road, it trivializes the immediate. And that's just, at some point, the championship game is going to be the immediate. Right? What are you going to look towards then? Right. So it's just building away. I liked in the book, Holiday talks about Garfield and how he couldn't pay for high school, so he was, the custodian for free tuition, and was proud of it and did the best job he possibly could and didn't complain and saw the value in the moment and didn't ask, oh man, how can I make this better, or woe's me, or I have to mop or sweep? No, he did it with a smile on his face. A couple of years later, 26, he's dean of that high school. I put myself in that situation, and I asked myself, would you be able to have that mentality? And I'd like to say yes, but I can also see myself being frustrated in that situation.
Right.
It's a learned thing, and just really a perspective shift.
Wow. That's a good story. I forgot the Garfield story.
Oh, it's so incredible.
But two other historic figures. One he mentions, the other one he doesn't. Well, he mentions them both because he had Reuben Hurricane Carter, the boxer. There's a movie called The Hurricane. I think Denzel Washington was the Hurricane. It might have been. Maybe wrong. But he was a boxer that was wrongfully accused and convicted for a life sentence. And when he showed up to prison, he said, he told them, he says, I will stay here because I have to, but I will never be treated like a prisoner in my mind, because I am not powerless. And when he was released, they finally figured out he didn't do it. He didn't spend his life trying to sue everybody. In fact, he didn't sue anybody. He just left.
No hard feelings.
And he went back to work. He went back to work with his life. Like Mandela was another one that was imprisoned and didn't come out, say, I'm going to take revenge on the people that put me in jail. He became a voice. He took that. I mean, this is a vintage situation. He took what happened to him as an opportunity to create movement.
Imagine that.
Yeah, momentum and movement. He was the miracle in South Africa. That was the reason it happened. One man. So if you don't think your voice matters, think about it. Something happened to you that you're passionate about. If you talk about it, it'll create momentum.
Yeah.
Spread it, share it.
That is the perfect example. Because think about it, right? I mean, the anger, the resentment, how much he must have lost. But having the foresight to understand, I gain nothing by being vindictive, by being angry, chasing these people. My friend Tom always says, a snake bites you, you can chase it into the woods and try and kill it, or you can go to the hospital, right? And it's one of them is emotional and will make you feel better in the moment. The other one's best for your life.
Right.
And it was a good representation of that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. It's the same example. Why waste precious energy on something else that you have to worry about rather than the crisis itself?
Yeah.
You got two things to worry about instead of one thing. Super cool. What do you got, Steve? I'm sure you got something for us.
Yeah, I have another take on the obstacle. Like using the obstacle to your advantage was a really interesting point. I mean, he painted a visual picture which helps me a lot, which was the example of the castle. It was at one point, I forget who it was trying to attack a castle. They couldn't enter it at all, so instead they just surrounded it, and that castle for those people inside became a prison. And that was a really cool way of putting that, like using the obstacle against itself. And it's like that image can be applied to so many things, and that was like a really easy way for me to understand that concept with that visual.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
The same chapter was the Blitzkrieg, the German
I believe so.
attack strategy that was post World War I, where it was a trench warfare. So long, thick trenches, and the Germans ended up creating this strategy that was short, pointed, massive bursts of energy through one point, and the Blitzkrieg would penetrate, and then they would go through. So they won all the wars. The early war and World War II, they ravaged through all of Europe in weeks. And then Eisenhower later on, they were so afraid of the Blitzkrieg, he said, well, let's make this into an advantage. So let's let them come in. And when they got through the lines, they formed a barrier around them. They used it as, Patton called it a meat grinder. Once they got in there, they didn't let them out. And that's what we won our war.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that they credit that with.
That was like a Your World Within Live when Brian Breach was like, people trash you in the comments. He's like, good, it's engagement. He's like, bring it in.
I learned that one the hard way. I was getting ridiculed for being a boomer. I'd say, work hard, write goals, like all the things my mentors have been telling me for years. And there's like all these hundreds of kids saying, okay, boomer.
Oh my
God.
God.
I got rid of them for a little while, but now I love it. I was like, yeah, I'm a boomer.
The okay boomer.
Boom
meme.
away.
That's phenomenal
There's
stuff.
kids calling me boomers. Hey, that's right. There's
be a
nothing worse
boomer.
than being no one's talking about you. It's indifference. I'd rather have someone love me or hate me.
So we got
hated but never ignored.
we have the voicemails. Some questions came in. We have some
Oh,
texts and some
sweet.
voicemails. You want to throw the headphones on and give it a shot?
All
Let's
right.
try it out.
The headphones.
All right. So again, if you want to text or call in, leave a voicemail, leave a text. The number is 754-273-6069. Any questions from this episode or the next one, which is actually on the book The Martian, which we'll talk about. But I'm going to play this voicemail. You guys give your thoughts on it. Here we go.
Hey, what's going on, Eddie? It's Jake here from Cape Cod. First off, I just wanted to say that I really love your material. You have a way with words that raises the bar, and you're amazing at what you do. So thank you for all of your work. So my biggest obstacle in life was my long-lasting addiction to drugs and alcohol. From about the age of 17 to 23, I suffered from hardcore drug and alcohol abuse. My life was getting progressively worse, causing me to lose my family, my friends, my self-esteem, my happiness, and whatever life that I had left. I was miserable and depressed, and I didn't see a way out. Death seemed to be the only escape. But I kept fighting. I fought through misery, through homelessness, through pain. Instead of sitting in my own misery, I went out and I sought help. Today I can tell you there's true beauty in the struggle. In the lowest of lows, there's light in the darkness. Today I'm about 2.5 years sober. I met the most beautiful, caring woman who's now my wife. We have a sweet and beautiful 17-month-old son. Life is second to none today, and it's only because I went through the struggles and the pain, and I never threw in the towel. Everything happens for a reason, truly, and I'm living proof of that. So tell me, Eddie, what advice would you give to someone in that kind of mental state? Someone who just feels like all hope is gone and things will never get better. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks again for everything, man. Keep up the amazing content. I'll be here listening. Thanks.
Wow. It's quite the what a miraculous turnaround. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, something like that. I mean, the interesting thing about a situation like that is it's so overwhelming, right? It just seems it's not one little thing. It just feels so big and so monumental that it's easy to embrace this sort of learned state of helplessness. Mm-hmm. I think like the way I've approached it and the way my darkest days, which were about 3 years ago, I went through a very difficult 3 or 4 month stretch. And the way I ultimately found my way out of that was, again, not trying to solve everything, but doing one little thing. It's realizing that, one, you're in control, and two, big change is the culmination of like little steps. So knowing that things aren't perfect, and that's challenging. You want to be back on top of the mountain, but if you take one little step every day, that's a win. And not only are you moving forward, but you're identifying as a winner. You're becoming in your mind someone that can overcome these obstacles and change your life. And that's the way I'd articulate it, is just think small, think achievable. Because, like we just said, one light switch away, everything you have you need. You just have to know that. You probably jump right on that. I mean, you've been to hell and back yourself, sir.
It's addiction. And lots. Addiction actually is an interesting concept. I've studied it all over the world. I've looked at all the modalities, and one that comes to mind is what a addiction is. An addiction is you use a substance to produce a feeling that your body can't produce on its own. To get away, usually out of pain. And a lot of people, it's alcohol, it's drugs. Some people, it's some other compulsion, but it's some kind of compulsion that's not serving you and won't serve you. And what I think I heard Jake say is that he made the decision. My first step in my algorithm to recreate yourself is make a decision. Decide. Decision means away from, cision, to cut. That's the etymology of decision. To cut away from, and to change the fruit of your life, you need to change the roots. So a Stoic would say, what's the one thing that if I see this as it is alcohol and drugs is going to kill me, can I do something about it? Mm-hmm. Can I make a cut? Even today, just one day. It's one thing I teach people. It's like if you don't know what to do, no matter what modality you subscribe to, and there's many, try just not to drink. Make your own experiment with yourself and see how you feel. Let your brain do some connections to what feelings are produced when you don't drink. You're going to have some. And can you do something other than alcohol and drugs to produce a feeling like that? Could it be music? Could it be working out? Could it be new friends? Could it be a new environment? Could it be new diet, exercise, new passions? And then the second one is this story. The second one is dream. And tell yourself a story of who you are. Create a reputation for yourself to live up to. I heard you have a new love. You're a new person. You've created a new character that you have become known to be. So you've made a new story. You've installed a new story for your path and journey. And there's lots of ways to do that. And actually, some are referenced in the book. So you want to be a superhero. You want to be someone amazing, someone known for something great. Looking back on your life, you don't want to trade it for any other. You want to be known for someone who made a comeback. Mm-hmm. And the last one is to the process, Nick Saban, to the domino effect. What's one thing you can do today, this little thing you can do, because the domino creates what's called action potential. A little 2-inch domino, stores energy when it's moved forward, creates what's called action potential. That means you can amplify your effectiveness. It can knock enough action potential not only to knock over another domino, but one more 50% bigger. So the 2-inch domino can knock over a 3-inch domino. So if you went from drinking one day or heavily using drugs and you tried something to get a win, you've created action potential. And when you're there, you reassess and say, what can I do now, tomorrow, to get another win? And then another win. And pretty soon you're 2.5 years away from where you were. Look back, celebrate. Look at the hero you've become, Jake. Awesome. I applaud you, man.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And share it and help others, because it's just a matter of going from the brink of lifelessness through taking your own life to being a hero, being someone that can teach others. And the story that you say to us can save someone's life. One little piece of advice: take the action.
Yeah. Someone listening will hear that story and be inspired.
Sweet.
I was thinking that too, is like just your own courage to share that story. Like someone listening will gain something from that. So if you're in that situation, you could even helping others will give you can give you that sense of purpose and fulfillment that
Love it.
might give you some fuel. All right. Well, that was a fantastic message. Thank you for that one. We got a text here from Vince. It says, how important is the Stoic philosophy in positively interpreting a challenge or obstacle? And what are the best strategies to reframe the obstacle to your benefit? I think we talked about that a lot, but
Yeah.
good question.
I'll take that one.
Best strategies.
A strategy. I mean, again, I think it's the same
Same
thing.
thing, yeah.
See it for what it is. It's an obstacle. Ask yourself: is there a win here? Is there something that's good for me I'm not seeing?
Yeah.
And if there's not, and you just can't see it, get someone else to look at the same problem. And if you can't see that, research others that had the same problem. Very few problems showed up once.
Yeah.
They usually kind of come back because there's an algorithm. There is a process, a set of steps to get the result that has been written and recorded somewhere in the world to solve the problem that you currently suffer with. Guarantee you.
Already a map.
It's in a book. It's in a cognitive therapist's office, in their study books, in their materials, in their systems, and it's sitting somewhere. And you got to have the desire to find that solution.
Yeah.
And look at it like, okay, once that's done, wow, now you have a new path.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. And I know we've said this 20 times now, but like perspective. Like two people can look at the exact same thing, and one can take that and use it as a tool to win and to take a step, and another person can see that same thing as a reason to stay right where they are. And the theme throughout this entire book, which is why I found so much value in it, all these people, all different fields, all different times, but they all looked at a situation and asked themselves a single question: how can I take this and make my life better with these circumstances? And it's just not an intuitive thing. I think that's why we spend so much time talking about it, because it's not, at least for me, right? It's not something that comes natural. It's something that I've had to work at. Your brain doesn't go, oh, look, the sky's falling down. How can you take something great out of this? It's like, no, you want to react emotionally. But if you can teach yourself to find a win, it'll change your life.
Right.
I got one more voicemail if you want to take a crack at it. But I got to put in my favorite quote of the book. And I think it's just Ryan Holiday's quote. I don't think he quoted anybody. It's, genius is just persistence in disguise.
Woo! I
just
love it.
I love that one. Okay, so we got one more voicemail from Naomi. Here we go.
Hi, Eddie. Hi, Terry. It's Naomi. I wanted to say that I'm really enjoying the reviews on the books that you guys are choosing to read and share with us. I'm very excited to hear your view on the next book, Obstacles the Way by Ryan Holiday. I'm interested to know when you both, either one of you, had the moment of clarity when you realized that when obstacles came your way or you faced adversity, that emotions were not serving you and that you needed to look at it in a different way, different perception. And when you realized, at what point in your life was it that you said, okay, I need to step back from this and be more disciplined and stoic about it and figure out that there are different ways to embrace these obstacles and eventually look at them in a different way and be great. So looking forward to the review. You guys are great. Keep up the fantastic work. I'm really enjoying all the different takes and views on the different books. And forward to the next podcast. Have a great day, guys.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy to start. I mean, I have an answer, and then, okay, well, I'll just start by saying I think the first time I realized a direct correlation between suffering and success was in Boston, the Running in the Rain deal, like that one morning. So in a way, there was a trigger for me. There was a turning point. It was, it was sleeting out. It was freezing. It was uncomfortable. It was still dark. And I made a decision to go on a simple run, and got home and just had this feeling of almost like a euphoric feeling, and knowing that I wasn't given an award or anything like that. No one cared. but I felt like I did something that the rest of the world couldn't. And that sentiment came with me for everything else I did after that. So the second piece of that answer, as far as I'm concerned, is that it wasn't just that one thing. It's a snowball, right? It's coincidentally, an ego is the enemy, which is sort of the follow-up to this. You know, Ryan Holiday says confidence is earned. And that's almost what it was, you know, like after I left my job, when my finances were drying up, when I wanted to go back, I remembered running in the rain. I remembered suffering and how that brought me a step forward. And so I stayed. I didn't go back. Same thing with keynote speaking. The first time I was going to keynote speak, I was like hyperventilating. I was terrified. I didn't want to do it. But I did it anyway. I didn't do a great job. I did an okay job, but it ended up propelling me forward. It was the foundation for everything. And so, in other words, every little situation, every time that, you know, your instinct tells you to retreat because you're scared, all of those, the culmination of those things manifest into greatness, into growth and progress progress is happiness. How was that for an answer? That's 20 minutes long.
Well done. You know, that's thanks, Naomi, for the question. My take on that was at what point, and I can only say this, that I ended up having the opportunity to share a message on the TED stage. I was very, very close to doing the entire 18 minutes on labels.
What do you mean labels?
Labels, like people label you. And the reason I think I managed to find some form of success was I was lie labeling myself as this, you know, the way I was getting my results, I used to almost brag about it. I didn't finish college, and I was partying when everyone else was working hard, and I got some results somehow. And that was and I think I was almost respected for that mistakenly. And Kierkegaard said, "Once you label me, you negate me." It's one of my favorite quotes. So it wasn't until I found myself in a drug and alcohol rehab center when I was, you know, on the way out, and, you know, looked like the end was coming, and they told me, like, you know, you're an addict. You know, that was a label they assigned me. I was like, man, I didn't like how that felt. And they wanted to rehabilitate me, meaning they wanted to restore me back to the way I was. And I looked back and I said, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be restored back to my original condition. And that's when I made that was ground zero. I will never forget it. It's like, I am not going to do that. I'm going to recreate myself, which means to make something new that's never existed before. So my book that came out of that was, I'm not an addict, I'm a superhero. Like, I'm the opposite. And I labeled myself. And that was the thing. I told myself a story. And the story was that I'm capable. I can recover from anything. I can recreate myself into anything. I can do that one at a time. I'll figure it out. And labels are, that was like, I didn't like that. And at some level, the lies that I told myself kind of served me later in life when I was smart enough to see things as they really are. To this book is like, this is how it really was. And how I like to add to that how they really can be.
Right.
You know, speak to possibilities. Well, what can you be if you look back on it? And what would be a good story that people would respect, that would move others?
Sure. And
help others. And that's kind of what I decided to do.
And your situation shined a spotlight on that for you. Like, in other words, the negative situation made you, for the first time, see your labels.
Right. Yeah.
Which is super interesting.
Yeah, it is. It was like, it almost woke me up. It woke me up from, I think I was cruising on into the grave, and it kind of woke me up. I said, wait a minute. I'm not that. I don't want to die like that. I want to be remembered as that person.
Right.
Because once you're gone, you're gone. And, you know, whatever ego you have left is the way you're going to be remembered. Your legacy will be who you are. So Jake, who spoke earlier, won't be remembered for the kid who did drugs and alcohol. He'll be remembered for the person who came back and started a new family and a new life and helped others.
Yeah.
It's a much better self-story,
awesome.
You know.
All right. Maybe time for one more?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so I got, let's see. This one's from Mike. It says, so, hey, guys, been a fan with you since day one. Happy this week's book is Obstacles is the Way, because over half of my life I've been running from my problems and obstacles. My biggest problem was confidence and independence, and when it came time in my life to move out of my family's house, I had no choice but to face them. That's when the gold stuff happened. I was forced out of my shell, and now I walk around with a high head and a proper mindset. My question to you is, how do you give someone insight on not waiting for the last resort until you face your problems? Walk into your fears willingly rather than desperately. Great question.
That's a great question. Thanks, Mike. Well, I think it's the idea of having to know all the answers, don't you? I mean, that held me back many times in my life, like thinking that it's like, oh, I'm not like well equipped
Right.
for this. I don't have everything I need yet. When in reality, it's like, I mean, truly, just kind of starting and fumbling around like an idiot till you figure it out. I mean, that's.
Right.
But it's hard to tell people that up front because people think, you see folks that are, that maybe you want to be like, or they have certain things you want. And you think they were always like that, or they always knew, or they always had the answers. And it's like, no, you got to go and just figure it out. Again, I probably say this on every podcast, and I'll probably continue to. Not all who wander are lost. Mm-hmm. That applies to big picture. It applies to little projects. It applies to jobs you're looking for. It applies to relationships. It's like you have to be vulnerable enough to just go and let the world come to you. Put the pieces together as you sort of progress.
Right. I think he talks about, that's a great question, but the Steve Jobs' dad in this book.
Oh, yeah.
His father was a Finnish carpenter, and he used to, they said that he actually finished the inside of a cupboard. No one would ever see it.
Right.
And then Jobs, when he was at Apple, he would, and there's a point to this, he would finish the inside of the components that no one would ever see. The consumer would never see it. Only the techs that opened the thing up would see it and say, wow, Jobs finished the inside of this phone for some reason.
Right.
But later, Jobs realized that you have to get something out the door, minimum. He called it the minimum viable product, the MVP. And Guy Kawasaki did that TED Talk, don't worry, be crappy. Like, get it out the door, and to getting kicked out of your nest, you lose a lot of opportunities when you wait. The opportunities are this big right now, and as you start to wait, they become fewer. Because you can't improve on anything that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And if you think it's something you want to do, give it a shot and screw it up.
That's a good way to put it. You can't improve on anything that doesn't exist.
Right.
Got to get the wheels moving.
And that's why they put something out. When they put the first iPhone out, it didn't do a lot of the things. In fact, the iPhones we have today do something new that the first one never even dreamed of doing. They were improving on something repeatedly.
Right.
And that's how you work on your own life. You're always rewriting and recreating yourself every day.
Right.
In my mind.
That's
and you're improving on it. You go from something to nothing, from nothing to something to something better, from something better to something great, on and on and on. And here you are.
And don't forget.
Living a different life.
Don't forget. This is important. You are always one situation, one creation, one discussion, one step away from a complete change, right? You can go from, feeling stuck, feeling unsure, and getting a job offer that changes your life. Or, being a musician and writing song after song after song and making one that changes your life. Like, the idea of going from 0 to 60, it's built over time. Like, it happens, but you have to let yourself put those reps in, And again, another thing that's not intuitive. No one wants to create without validation, but you have to.
Right. That's great. That's a good question.
One more thing about that. When you said the fear, how do you overcome it? The one thing I heard someone say on a podcast, I can't remember who it was either a podcast or a TED Talk, but when you overcome that fear and you learn from it, it's a muscle. You have to remember that's a muscle too. So, and then what he was saying is that now every time he feels that fear what's the word? Like bubble up. Mm-hmm. He feels that fear bubble up. He's like, what is that? I want to attack that now. Because he knows from all his past experiences, every time he overcame it is when he grew. So if you do it just the first time and you learn from it and you see what comes out of that fear on the other side of it, then next time it comes up, it's almost like a signal. Instead of it being like fear, something you hide away from, it's like, ooh, it's almost like you like the fear. He was flipping it completely on its head. It was pretty much the essence of obstacle is the way.
I love it.
Yeah, that's when you take you take a feeling and you create an algorithm with it. When I feel this, I do that.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden, after a while, that becomes your new practice.
Yeah.
For the good and for the bad, by the way.
In one of the courses that we released a few months ago, Creating Your World Within, it's like basically 10 steps to sort of help your mindset. And one of the what's it called?
The worksheet?
Yeah, but what's the word for that? Like it's a
Worksheet.
We'll go worksheet. Yeah, let's not make it difficult.
No.
Basically, it's a fear ladder, and it asks you to rank
Oh.
the things. I love this, man. You rank the things that you're scared of, and up top you put like the most terrifying thing, right, and then all the way down to the bottom, which is something tiny that it's a little bit scary, but that you can do, right. And so the idea is you start chipping away from the bottom of the ladder, the tiny ones, and you continually make your way up. And to Steve's point, like you grow sort of this, you become stronger, mentally tougher. And so with each little win, by the time you get to the big ones, the big fears, you're well equipped. You've like changed your mindset. You've become accustomed to the feeling of doing what scares you.
Right.
It's a good way to do that. So I recommend anyone who's got some things to work on to throw all that together.
Sounds like Toastmasters. I mean, have you ever Toastmasters is a I think it's a nonprofit. There's like if you want to be a public speaker, there's in most cities there's a Toastmaster group.
Yeah.
And one of the things they do at Toastmaster is when you're new, they'll take you around to strangers and they'll have them pitch you something. You'll see them. It happened to me before. I'm sitting there eating lunch once, and some lady says, "We're with Toastmasters. Would you mind if we practice on you?" I was like, "Sure." And they practiced on me. And this person, well, you could tell the look in their eye, like they're scared. And they pitched, and I go, "Great job," And that they did it 6 times. It becomes the standard, and you do it enough times. Like if you want to do video, you want to ultimately get yourself out there, and you have a message. You're gonna have to do video. You're gonna have to do interviews. You're gonna have to do speaking and writing, things you may not like to do. Practice
Reps.
and don't release it if you don't like it. You got to get used to the way you project. You got to get used to that and improve upon it. Same thing.
Love it.
Cool. It's like working out. You're not going to lift 500 pounds. You work that muscle till you can. Okay, anyway. Leave a review. Thank you guys for listening. Leave a rating. It really helps us out. And if you want that number one more time, it is 754-273-6069. Let them know what they got for next week.
Next week we're doing The Martian, which is an amazing book. It's a fictional book. A lot of you have probably seen the movie, but for entrepreneurs, I consider it an essential.
Right.
We talk about this all the time too. One of our favorites. It's about an individual in tough situations over and over and over again, putting the pieces together and figuring it out. So, if you have, if it's possible, you can read the book. We'd love to get any questions about it specifically and chat next week.
Yeah, it's a good book that follows this book. Obstacle after obstacle and solution after solution.
Exactly.
It's a great book. It's a great movie. Leave us a comment. Leave us a message. We'll tag it head on.
All right, guys. Until next time.
All right. Thanks.